finale. We have the immense pleasure of presenting Sara El Sayed to read a passage from her debut book, Muddy People. Are you kidding me? This is so cool. So, Sara El Sayed was born in Alexandria, Egypt. She has a Master of Fine Arts and works here at QUT. Her work features in the anthologies Growing Up African in Australia and Arab Australian Other, among other places. She is a recipient of a Queensland Writers Fellowship and was a finalist for the 2020 Queensland Premier's Young Writers and Publishers Award. Muddy People is her first book, and we're just very, very excited. So please welcome Sara.
Thank you so much. That was such a lovely casting. Can I just say before I start how absolutely wonderful it is to be here? I'm going to get emotional because I did my undergrad here, and Lit Salon has been going on for a little while, and it's just so lovely to see the community still going, and it's just amazing. And it's amazing to follow Jess, who's one of my students last semester, and I read her work in my class, and just to see her on stage, and I could spot. Saw Jamie before, so Jamie, how is you? And Tracy as well, and faces that I've seen around campus. It's just so special for me to be here, and for this to be the first event for this book is just amazing. And I thank you so much for being here, and congratulations to you as well for keeping this alive, especially the Lit Salon team. You're doing amazing work, I know, here and in class, and I can't wait to see all of your names published out there, if not already. So congratulations to you as well. Big claps for you. I'm just going to read one of the first chapters out of my book, my memoir. So this is called These Are the Rules. Mama learned early on that her daughter was different from her son. Muhammad threw tantrums. Sus stayed quiet if you gave her something sweet. In Arabic, a sus, a cavity, is what you get after eating too much sugar. My parents gave me the nickname when I was 4. By that time, I had 2 gold crowns and twice as many holes in my teeth. In my mouth now, one would struggle to find a tooth that's not stuffed with a filling. I was never in the habit of maintaining good oral health. We aren't brought up that way. We don't nurture what isn't healthy. When our grass isn't as green as we'd want, we concrete over it. Muhammad was difficult from the beginning, stuck sideways inside my mother. He didn't want to come out. It's too much, the delivering doctor said in Arabic, throwing his hands in the air. He won't budge. I don't know what to do. He left the room to pray and came back smelling like a cigarette. By that time, Mama was screaming and Muhammad was crowning. By the grace of God, said the doctor. My father was happy his first child was a boy. They named him Muhammad, like every other baby boy born in Alexandria, Egypt, on that day. When my grandparents came to see him, the nurse brought the wrong baby. That's not my son, said Baba. His son, of course, was the one with the big nose. It was like a hook, Nana tells me, reminiscing the birth of her first grandchild. She makes a hook shape with her finger, in case words don't do justice to the severity. It was big, Mama concurs. Huge, so ugly, like his grandfather's. An Arab nose for sure. And he was green, all over, like an alien. Green and big nose. Very unattractive. A truly ugly child. My father describes my birth as no problems. The biggest hitch, in fact, was Muhammad asking for squid sandwiches. Subir, shouted the toddler, standing in the front seat of our Lada Niva. Baba drove him to the sandwich shop after dropping Mama at the hospital. I asked Mama about my birth, and she describes being knocked out by anesthetic, then being shaken awake by doctors telling her to push, then passing out, then waking up to the smell of squid, then seeing the contents of her stomach on the floor. Muhammad never slept through the night as a baby. Sus never woke up. I didn't even wake up during my first zilzal, earthquake. I was a newborn, the weight of a milk bottle. My brother was the weight of a small cow, Mama says. The zilzal struck in the middle of the night. Your father picked you up out of your cot and ran downstairs straight away, said Mama, and he left the big 2-year-old to me. 7 flights of stairs, 7 flights of stairs. The apartment building we lived in had armed guards out the front. who swung their guns over their shoulders like schoolboys with backpacks. They were there to protect the person who lived on the top floor, a diplomat, someone from somewhere else who was important enough to kill for. I was not supposed to talk to the guards, but sometimes they would smile at me when I was with my father. They weren't always around, which somewhat defeated the purpose. But always there, living in what was likely built as a cloakroom, was the porter and his family. I counted 7 the last time I got a peek inside. The porter was a friendly old man who treated us like royalty. He greeted my father, calling him Austere, Professor. My father was not a professor, but this is what people like the porter call people like my father. It was clear to me, even then, that the porter would never be an Austere. That title was not made for him. The porter would stand sentry outside the building when the guards disappeared, sometimes all night. Evening was when people were energized, walking through the streets, kids playing in the park, dripping ice cream down their hands under the watchful eye of their smoking parents. People stayed out even later during Ramadan. One year, when we arrived back home late, the porter greeted my father. Ramadan Kareem, the Austere, he said, his voice croaky from hours spent in silence. Allahu Akram, said my father. The door of the cloakroom was open, and I could hear the family whispering to one another. My father thanked the porter for running an errand for him earlier. Baba removed the gold sparkly watch from his wrist and held it out to the porter. An early Eid gift, he said in Arabic. The porter had a hard time accepting, but eventually took it, looking a little wet-eyed. There was a blotch of ice cream on my father's shirt from when he had finished my strawberry cone. I wanted to tell him, but I was worried it would ruin the moment. By morning, a guard would usually be back at his station, giving the porter a chance to sleep. From our 7th floor balcony, they all looked like toy soldiers. I wasn't scared of them, even with their guns. A cardboard box on our balcony housed our pet tortoise, Leafy. One day, Leafy escaped his box. Being slow, he had plenty of time to think, and even so, he walked right off the edge and shouted when he hit the ground, and the guard who found him threw his body into the bushes of the park across the building, always watching. From our balcony, we could see the entire park. To a child, it was a grand vista. In actuality, it was a circle of turf, lined with hedges twice as tall as a toddler. Pavement ran around the circle, then diagonally out to the corners of the rectangular plot, like the crosshairs of a sniper rifle. But for a long time, it was the biggest place on earth to me. Baba has a story about a time he took me there. It was a rainy day, a bad day to go out, he says. You were walking behind me, and suddenly you started screaming like you'd seen a ghost. You stopped in front of a puddle of water. You were screaming, "Sunny, Sunny!" And I said, "What do you mean, sunny? It's not sunny today." You keep screaming, "Sunny, Sunny!" and pointing to the water. You were screaming your lungs out. You know, the whole park was looking at us. And finally, I got it. You didn't mean sunny, you meant muddy. You were worried about crossing the water. You got the words confused. You meant one thing, you said something else, the complete opposite. Isn't that funny? Wet shoes, that was the problem. I was 4 and I was learning how to keep my shoes clean. I had learned at the mosque that cleanliness was next to godliness. You had to be clean when you spoke to Allah. Even outside the mosque, clean people got respect. People with neat hair, ironed shirts, pressed trousers, and spotless, expensive new shoes. If you didn't have those things, you did not belong in the building. You belonged in the cloakroom. My best friend Nora's grandmother lived on a street bordering the far side of the park. I could see her piano, which I was never allowed to touch when I visited, through her front window. Nora was pale as can be, and a bit stupid too. She'd bounce a basketball with 2 hands while jumping up and down at the same time with the ball. Every time I saw that piano through her grandmother's window, I thought about how 2-hand dribble Nora was allowed to play it and I was not. Nora looked sickly sometimes, with her pasty skin and black heavy plaits. I didn't want to be like her, I just wanted to touch that piano, and that made me angry. Whenever I visited Nora's house, I would make sure Mama brushed my hair back neatly. I checked my clothes didn't have any wrinkles, and I inspected my shoes for muddy spots. But even when I looked perfect, I was never good enough to sit on that piano stool. In the bedroom I shared with Muhammad, the walls were decorated with drawings of bananas in pajamas and a letter that Muhammad had submitted to his Junior 3 teacher titled, "I love you, Miss Sayed." Returned. A wooden bookshelf bordered one wall. Nana would read to us every night before we went to sleep, the light of our bedroom lamp peeking through the crown of her dyed hair. There was no way there were any natural blondes in our family. The last book we read together in that room was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione was my favourite character because she was a girl and had fuzzy hair, just like me. Nana would pronounce her name how it was spelt, Hermione. When I saw the movie, I realised someone had to be wrong. Next to the bookshelf sat a toy plastic castle that opened in the middle to reveal petite royal quarters. It came with a tiny princess no taller than the top half of my finger. She had blonde hair, white skin, and no pupils. Her gazeless blue eyes frightened the hell out of me, Princess Shaitan. One look was all it took before I locked her in the castle and never opened it again. There was soon to be another little princess in the house. Ear pressed to Mama's belly, I imagined what my new sister would look like. The image of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, pupilless princess fixed itself in my mind. Mama went into labor 2 weeks before my birthday, in the middle of the night. I awoke to a house with no parents. Nana bundled Muhammad and I into a taxi and took us to school. Our uncle picked us up afterwards. "Have you seen the baby yet?" I asked him. "No, not yet," he said. He looked like my father. He had the same pattern baldness. The car had a sunroof that wasn't letting any sun in, and I stood up on the seat and stuck my head out. The smell of seawater and garbage water hit me. The streets in Alexandria were plastered with posters of President Mubarak. At the time, I thought this meant we loved him. Some people even had portraits of him in their homes. Underneath the posters were families sleeping on cardboard. My uncle shouted at me to sit down. Little girls holding their infant sisters begged for money from passers-by. When we arrived at the hospital, my sister was wearing the Winnie the Pooh outfit I had picked out for her. She smelled of cooling dough and screamed as I held her. I passed her to Nana and ate the jelly the nurse had left for Mama. Baba was freaked out by her fingers. "So long and thin," he said. "Creepy." By the time Aisha was 1, she had a head of blonde curls that took everyone by surprise. Like an alien, Baba said. Aisha Sabua was the last time I saw all my family and friends in one place. A Sabua is a sort of christening for Muslim babies, so not a christening at all. A doula came to the house and placed Aisha in a sieve on the floor. She put a large knife next to her, then moved it to the other side, then put the knife on Aisha's little chest. Everyone else walked around the house in a line, a candle in one hand, slipping sugar-coated almonds into their mouths with the other. Noor stepped on the backs of my shoes as we circled the apartment. I barely recognized anyone. The only sense of warmth was from the candle in my hand and Noor's hot breath on the back of my neck. They all must have been there before, for my Sabua, but I hadn't seen them since. People only show up when there's food. Mama already had an Australian passport because she'd lived in Melbourne before. In the 1970s, her father got a job at an architecture firm. Nana remembers the names Glen Ferry and Malvern and the tram on her doorstep. Nana worked in a library while Mama went to preschool with little girls named Liz. They stayed until Mama was 10, then Nana took Mama and fled back to Alexandria, leaving her husband behind. Nana didn't mind Australia, but there was no place beautiful enough to make her forget the hate she had for her husband. Mama loved Australia and promised herself that she would return one day. I found it very strange, Baba tells me, that your mother was obsessed with Australia. Every year from 1992 to 2001, she would ask me, "Can we go to Australia now? Can we go to Australia now?" Like a little girl asking to go to the toilet. I don't know why she wanted to go so badly. I kept saying, "I have business here and we can't go." But it got a bit hard, the business, the money. So I said, "Let's go." My parents decided to leave Egypt for good. The economic uncertainty and political unrest that would eventually erupt in a revolution in 2011 was showing its signs. In 2001, Baba began compiling a binder of all the suburbs in Brisbane, comparing houses, schools, jobs, He spent weeks on the computer researching. Since Mama was already a citizen, her children could become Australians too, but Baba had to get a visa. Are you sick? I asked as he prepared to see a physician. We didn't visit doctors in my family because Mama was a doctor. We only had to show Mama our cut or the colour of our poo, and she'd figure out what to do. Baba seeing someone else was odd. No, but I have to get checked before they let us go. Why if you aren't sick? These are the rules, he said. Years later, Baba tells me what that physician said that day. There was a shadow behind my heart, he says. He didn't know what it was, he just saw a shadow there, but he let me go. To him, I was healthy. Baba places both hands on his chest. You know, when I was young and I played with my friends, I always had a problem with breathing. I couldn't run for so long, and I know it was the shadow. If the doctor had known at that time, if he had known what it was, maybe he would have tried to treat it. Maybe he couldn't have been treated. Either way, we wouldn't have come here. We would have stayed in Egypt. I would be dead or alive, but I would be alive or dead there, not here. The shadow has been behind my heart for a very long time. Allah put it there a very long time ago. In his bedroom, 12 years after his first doctor's visit. Written this so long ago. Since marrying my mother, Baba's lymph nodes swell and press against the nerves in his back, his abdomen, and behind his heart. So nursing. And he falls to his knees. There was a room in our Alexandria flat with couches no one was allowed to sit on, a carpet no one was allowed to walk on, no muddy footprints, no feet at all. Most families I knew had this. A salon, a facade for friends, a gold frame picture of my parents on their wedding day hung on the wall. It was near the balcony, and in the afternoons the light would catch on the frame and on the edges of the furniture. When we moved, we took at least one thing from every room. From the living room, videotapes of Teletubbies and family celebrations. From the kitchen, plums to eat on the way to the airport, which ended up giving us all diarrhea. From Muhammad's and my bedroom, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. From my parents' room, the Quran. But we did not take a single thing from that salon, from that sunny room. That was to be preserved as it was at all costs. My parents are still there, hanging on the wall. Thanks. God bless.